Good. Okay, so what I just said, I got to say all over again because I want this to be recorded. I have stood on the shoulders of giants in this industry, and everything that I'm going to teach has been taught to me. Right now, I'm currently being mentored by Dr. Jay Tita. I meet with him once a week in a coaching type seminar that I'm going to be presenting tonight. I've been certified through him as a personal trainer. My wife Susan has all 3 levels of his nutrition certification, and he has taught me a tremendous amount. Before that, I always got to give credit to other people like Will Smith of IntraFit. I learned a tremendous amount from him. Dr. Frank Cerny at the University of Buffalo, Phil Kaplan, and many, many other people that I'm going to forget to mention, but I have learned a tremendous amount, and I'm very happy to be able to share everything I've learned in that form. Now, I can't teach you 30 years of exercise physiology in a half hour, but I'm going to try to give you the best of what I have so that you too can hopefully help to achieve your goal and your rewards that you want to accomplish. So I'm just going to minimize this screen here because... Oh, okay, cool. Hopefully now you can see my screen. See, that's why it's great to have a coach like Susan helping me out here. So I'm going to minimize this window so I can actually see my slides. There you go. This is called the Eat Clean and Get Lean model, and it's 12 weeks of coaching, online coaching with regards to exercise, nutrition, and mindset. My name is Mike Keenan, for those who haven't met me before. Susan and I own KM Fitness in Manasquan, New Jersey. And we're going to be talking about things like escaping the diet trap. And one thing else before we get started, how do I minimize this because I can't see the bottom of my slide? Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay, so here we have a nice picture of a woman. She looks like she was just exercising. She's got her physio ball there, and she is stuck potentially in the diet trap. She doesn't look really happy. Maybe she's over-exercising and under-eating, and maybe she has a headache because her blood sugar is unstable, and maybe she's had a change in motivation or her mood's not the same. We don't know what it is, but we can assume from her body language that she's really not happy. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. 3 key points that I really want to drive home. We're going to talk about the hormonal effect of food. We're going to talk about hormone balancing, the walking, the sleep, and the rest. And then we're also going to talk about the hormonal effect of intense exercise. Now, there's an example you're going to hear me use over and over and over again. But I want you in your mind's eye to picture a locomotive sitting on a track. And in that locomotive is water and coal. And they get that coal good and hot. And it starts to heat the water. And it's 190 degrees, it's 200 degrees, it's 210 degrees, and then we blow out the flame, if we could imagine we could do that. And that water was real hot. It was 210 degrees. That locomotive didn't move. Why? We need to get to 212 degrees to create steam. And it's steam that drives the turbine or the piston in the locomotive to get it to move. And there's so many of us who exercise, but we get up to 210 degrees, and we never do that little extra to get ourselves to 212. Therefore, we don't get the hormonal effect of the exercise. And actually what we start to do is we start to increase our stress levels and really throw our hormones out of balance. So as we go through these key points, think about the locomotive on the track and what happens when we just get hot water instead of steam. So what can I expect tonight? We're going to talk about the difference between fat loss and weight loss. If I told you can lose 10 pounds, but you had to lose 10 pounds of bone mass, you wouldn't do that. But if I told you we can do 10 pounds of stored body fat, that you might be more interested in. We're going to talk about how you can develop high energy while reducing your hunger and your cravings, which is really pretty cool. Now remember one thing, hunger comes from the belly and cravings come from the mind or the head. So if you just ate a full dinner and 10 minutes later you're looking for something else, that's cravings. So our program is designed to reduce hunger and help you to reduce cravings. So what's been taught since the year of the flood? and Moses crossed the Red Sea. We were taught to eat less and exercise more, and we're going to lose weight. Okay, everyone used that model. If you go to most clinical weight loss franchises, they're going to talk to you about eating prepackaged foods to reduce calories and going out and doing some jogging, and you're going to lose weight. And we know from our experience that, yes, does it work? But is it sustainable? Probably not. My days of wrestling and trying to hit a weight goal in order to compete, this is exactly what I did. But if you look at some old wrestlers, like myself sometimes we have damaged metabolism, and it's hard for us to lose weight because we've done this so many times that we've created bigger problems. Problems I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. This slide was developed by Jay Tita, and it explains 4 simple models in order to make change. We have eating on the vertical axis, and we have exercise on the horizontal. Now, if anyone needs a drink of water, take it, because I'm going to take one. We have 2 red squares and 2 blue squares. I want you to look at the red squares as something that maybe is not desirable, and the blue squares as the solution. So if we look at the bottom lower right, we have the eat less and exercise more model, the model we just talked about, okay? And will you lose fat on that model? Yes. But will you probably lose muscle on that model? Yes. Is it sustainable? No, it's not. And I'm going to explain why it's not a sustainable model in a short amount of time. We also have the eat more, exercise less model, which is what most people fall into after failing on the eat less, exercise more model, because you've lost motivation, you don't feel like exercising, you go back to eating what you were. Will you gain some of the muscle back? Yes. Will you gain some of the fat back? Absolutely. And now it's going to be harder to lose the fat because you've just decreased the amount of the size of your engine from eating less and exercising more. But let's focus on the 2 blue squares here. The eat less, exercise less model and the eat more, exercise more model. This is interesting. So when we look at eat less, exercise less on the bottom left, it says fat loss. Okay, well, what's going on here? Well, we're decreasing our calories, but we're not exercising as much. We're working on restoring our body, building back balance of our hormones in our systems. And this is the model that I started out with about 5.5, 6 weeks ago. And I got to tell you, I felt pretty good. Now I'm into the eat more, exercise more model, because now I'm trying to gain some muscle. So I lost some body fat, trying to gain back some muscle. And everyone says to me at this point, stop. You don't understand, Mike. I want to do both. I want to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. Well, that's what we call metabolic multitasking, and it's a myth. It can't be done. It can be done if you're using a ton of synthetic steroids. It can be done, but for our intents and purposes, metabolic multitasking doesn't work. You either have to lose fat or you're going to gain muscle, but you really can't do both at the same time. Okay? So here's a great picture. I want you to think of your brain as a thermostat, not a bank. Okay? To say, well, the way we lose weight is it's all about calories in, calories out. And when we do that, what's the one thing we negate in that whole equation is that we're hormonally driven. So let's talk about calories in, calories out real quick. You mean to tell me that 400 calories of cheesecake is the same as 400 calories of lean chicken, broccoli, and sweet potato? There's a huge hormonal difference between those 2 foods. One is a fat loss food, being the chicken, the broccoli, and the sweet potato, and we certainly think of cheesecake as a fat gain food. Okay, so for those who are not on the East Coast right now, I live in Manasquan, New Jersey, and it was 93 degrees today. So what happened to the thermostat in all of our homes? The air conditioning kicked on, didn't it? Unless you're like me. I deprived my family of air conditioning. No, I'm only kidding. The thermostat changed because the environment changed. Your body's the same way. When the environment changes, your metabolism is going to change. So it's not calories in, calories out. It's the body reading its environment and making change based on what it's presented. So your brain is a thermostat, not a bank. So let's get back to that yo-yo dieting scenario, the eat less and exercise more model. Well, let's just say that your resting metabolic rate is 2,000 calories a day, and you decide to lower your nutrition down to 1,500 calories a day. You're trying to create a calorie deficit, okay? Well, eventually, because your body's a thermostat, not a bank, your metabolic rate is going to decrease to try to match the amount of food that's coming in. Now, I'm not talking about one day. I'm talking more of a prolonged type thing. A week, 2 weeks goes by, and you're still on a very low calorie, low carbohydrate diet. Your body is going, you're going to push, the body's going to push back. And it pushes back with a vengeance. Your hunger and cravings start to increase as your energy drops. You tend to overeat and exercise less because, again, you have increased hunger and cravings and your energy's falling out. So you get that rebound weight gain, and then finally you get organized. You say, you know what, I'm gonna try that diet again because you know, I lost a little bit of weight and I kind of fell off the wagon, but I'm going to get back on the wagon and I'm going to go back and eat less and exercise more. And you continue to go through this process. And every time you go through, you decrease your metabolic rate and you start to move from something called metabolic compensation into metabolic resistance, which I'll be explaining in just a few moments. So what do we teach? Well, how are we different? Well, we teach, let's get your hormones and your metabolism balanced first, and then we move on from there. Now, you might say, okay, Mike, how do you know that my metabolism is balanced? What we teach is your heck in check. How is your hunger and how are your cravings? Are they okay? I mean, are you, you know, we use a scale from 0 to 10. So a lot of times I'll say, you know, what's your hunger at right now? You know, if you're at a 4, well, that's good. If you're at an 8, well, that's not so good. Same thing with cravings. You know, do you have crazy cravings at night? You have to eat after you've already eaten? Or do you say, no, I feel very satisfied? And what's your energy like? Now, once your metabolism is balanced and your heck is in check, you're going to naturally lower calories because you're not hungry and you don't have any cravings, so you're not looking for anything extra. So we teach to get lean and stay lean by balancing out your hormones, balancing out your blood sugar, and then applying the right exercise modalities to help you to achieve your goal. So your brain controls everything that happens in the body. So if the brain's dysfunctional, that means everything else is going to break down in that process. Okay? In your brain, you have the hypothalamus, and in the hypothalamus is your weight regulating mechanism, your thermostat. Okay? And there's 4 factors that Will Smith taught, and I'll never forget it because it just makes so much sense. So I'm going to share them with you now. The 4 things that affect the weight regulating mechanism is food, chemicals, and additives, exercise, movement, and rest, stress, and balancing out your blood sugar. So when Susan and I design a nutrition program and we design a lifestyle conditioning program and an exercise program, these are the 4 factors we take in. We want to try to get your food more whole, natural, non-GMO type food, you know, clean eating to eliminate things like fungicides and herbicides and injected steroids in the animals that you consume, you know. We want to try to eat free-range, wild-caught type foods. The proper amount of exercise and movement, which I'll talk about walking in a little bit, and then rest, sleep. How do we minimize stress? You know, there's some good stress and there's some bad stress. We'll deal with lifestyle changes and balancing your blood sugar by eating the right foods at the right times and in the right amounts. That's how we start to work on fixing the weight regulating mechanism so that the thermostat will adjust to the environment that you put it in, and we start to get the positive changes. So with nutrition, anyone who's ever done nutrition with Susan, this is her example. She talks about big rocks, little rocks, pebbles, and sand. If you have to put the rocks, the big rocks, in the bucket, you better put them in first, because if you fill the bucket up with sand, there's no room for the big rocks. So this is in priorities, and this isn't just about nutrition. This is kind of a life thing too. You know, you have to get your priorities in order. So let's talk about what's a big rock and what's sand in the nutrition world. Well, your big rocks are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. They have to go in the bucket first. So when we start a nutrition program, this is what we're going to start with. The next one is vitamins, minerals, and water. Now, hopefully, the protein, the carbohydrates, and the fats that you're eating have a nutritionally dense supply of vitamins, minerals, water, and fiber. I didn't want to leave fiber out. I'll have to put that in the slide next time. Third is supplements. Everyone wants to know, well, if I take this supplement, will it help me lose weight? And my question is, I don't know. How good are the protein, carbohydrates, and fats that you're eating, and how filled are they with vitamins, minerals, waters, and fiber? You know, there was a big thing with the fat burners years ago. They don't work if you don't have the first two rocks in line. And by the way, if your protein, carbohydrates, and fats are good and they're nutritionally dense and you're exercising properly, you don't need fat burners. And last but not least, the sand is free range, wild caught. Very, very important. But again, you know, if you're not eating the proper balance of protein, carbohydrates, and fat, whether it's GMO, not GMO, wild caught, it doesn't matter. Let's put things in orders of priority, and then it all works out in the end. So earlier I talked about what happens when we eat less and we exercise more. And we talked about things like metabolic compensation. And that's the weight regulating mechanism. That's the thermostat in your body. I mentioned earlier that your metabolic rate will drop to the level at which you're consuming calories. So if you significantly lower your caloric intake, not for a day, not for 2 days, I'm talking about weeks into a month, your body will compensate. That's called metabolic compensation. You'll get increased hunger cravings, decreased energy, and of course we'll talk about the weight gain and the overcompensation. I kind of already talked about that. But sometimes that goes on for a longer period of time. And let's talk about what the next step is. Well, the next step up the line is metabolic resistance. Now we're starting to make some permanent negative changes in the body. And after chronic low-calorie diets and extreme exercise, weight loss plateaus and hunger and cravings increase while energy decreases. Now, people get upset, their metabolic rate drops, I'm on this plateau, I got to get off of it. So what do most people do at this point? They naturally start to reduce their calories even more, which brings you down into the depths of worse metabolic resistance. Now we're starting to get changes in brain chemistry, stress, moodiness, fatigue, hormonal imbalances, okay? And you can start to get decreased motivation and decreased self-confidence. So now it's not just about weight loss. Now it's starting to change other aspects of your life as well. The next step is metabolic damage. And unfortunately, by the time someone gets to us here, and Susan and I see this, this is something where, you know, we certainly need to bring physicians in, because now we're at a point where people have some very serious conditions that need to be addressed medically as well. Things like adrenal fatigue, polycystic ovarian syndrome, digestive issues. We start to see poor growth of hair and skin and nails. We start to develop autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, and leukopenia. Now, I threw leukopenia in there because I had leukopenia, and it happened back in 2000 when I was training for a physique transformation. And guess what Mike was doing? He had cut his calories too low, and I was very much over-exercising. I got down, those who know me, I got down to 177 pounds. I was down about 12% body fat, and I went to the doctor. He did my blood work, and he said, well, you know, Mike, your white blood cell count is low. Your normal level is at 4.0, and you're at 1.8. And I remember when I was treating people who had chemotherapy and physical therapy, and if they came in with a 1.8 white blood cell count, I had to wear a mask so I didn't accidentally get them sick. So I was not the healthiest person out there. I needed to make a change. So that's an example of giving yourself an autoimmune disease. We start to see muscle wasting, increases in body fat increases, and again we have our adrenal fatigue, hypothyroidism, and mitochondrial disease. I'm going to just ask by show of hands, how's everybody doing out there? Are you following with me? If you have any questions at all as I go through this, because I'm going through this fairly quickly, you can type them into the chat box. I just opened up my chat box. But just by a show of hands, how many people kind of are getting the idea that eating too little, and